Hello, welcome to Sports Today. In fact, we are back with you after 10 hours after reporting on Milkha Singh's demise in Chandigarh at a Chandigarh hospital on Friday night at 11:30 p.m. He died due to COVID-19 complications at the age of 91, and the entire country is saddened, shocked. There have been tributes pouring in from every fraternity in the country, from politicians, sporting legends to film stars. Has been an absolute outpouring of tributes and emotions. I have with me, of course, Boria Majumdar, uh, one of the country's leading sports journalists, historians, writers, broadcasters. He's, of course, spent years talking to Milkha Singh. Milkha and Boria go back a long way. Boria, your first reactions to what when you heard about it last night and your memories with the legend. You spent a lot of time talking sports with him.
Yes, and I've learned a lot. I mean, he has always blessed me. He was very kind, very generous. In fact, came to my book launch in 2008, my first book on the Olympics, the India story. He attended the book launch, was on stage, blessed me on stage. Yeah, I mean, as I said, I sort of go back a long way. And he was always generous with his time, whether on the phone, whether in person, always very generous with his time, telling me stories. So yes, I mean, like everybody else in India at this point in time, it's very, very sort of sad. I mean, he was recovering. All of us were told that he's getting better, and then obviously his wife passed away, and then within a week, the legend Milkha Singh leaving us. It's a disappointing, sad, and very upsetting news, if you want to call it that way. But what is important here is he will live on. Memories will live on. I mean, as long as India and Indian sport survives, the legend of Milkha Singh will also survive. It's because he was one of the greatest that this country has ever produced, Ayush.
Boria, it will be nice to also look back at Milkha Singh fondly. From what we know of him, he was gregarious. He was a happy man. He was very generous with his time, like you said, and he always entertained guests very nicely. The people who've been to his place, they've often commented on what a gracious host he was. You tell us about some of those experiences, and also since you are, yes, you're a sports journalist of note, and you're also a noted historian. How would you look back at his contribution to Indian sports, and especially that Rome Olympics? Everybody talks about him, Milkha Singh and the Rome Olympics, how he missed out on a medal by a whisker. Take us through that moment.
Yeah, very good question. That's actually the most important question that you just asked. By the way, till he was, he passed away at 91. Till the mid 80s, he was a regular feature in Chandigarh parties. He was a regular feature. The man loved his life. He was full of life. And every time you called him Bete, and it would start like that, and it would continue, and he would go into a story, and then, one story after another, and fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And, those little nudges also. GS Randhawa versus Milkha Singh, greatest, etc. So, but full of commitment, full of passion, full of life. You asked me about where do you locate him? Look, in 1950s, I mean, uh, can be an athletics champion, a distance runner, a quarter mile champion coming out of India is inconceivable. The greatest legacy of Milkha Singh is that he fired world imagination at a point when to see an athletics champion coming out of a country which had just won independence 5-7 years back was not even in the realm of imagination. So he is, in that sense, Indian athletics' first superstar, real rock star. Obviously, everybody knows coming from Pakistan and the rest of it and all the usual ones. But you've asked me Rome. Let me take you to Rome. Before Rome, if you actually see the build-up, and if you see, Milkha Singh was one of the favorites. Milkha Singh was clearly one of the favorites going into Rome. If you see the way he had trained, if you see contemporary newspaper reports, you will see Vince Reel, who was the coach of the Indian team, constantly talk up Milkha's chances. So Milkha would do his drills very differently. Milkha would do short bursts. So in Rome, he would practice for about an hour and a half every day. And he would do 100 yards, 150 yards, 200 yards, sprints. So when people went and asked Vince Reel, but why are you doing this? To Milkha. And then it was like, I've got the stamina. I know I can run the quarter mile, but I just need my sprint. So he would do, in terms of training, he would do 100 yards, 150 yards, 200 yards to sort of get him up to speed and get him up to pace. The temperature in Rome at that point in time was very, very hot. It was very hot. And it was said that this should help the Indian. And what a race it was! I mean, if you see 45.6 Milkha, all four had broken the world record. All four. I mean, whether it is Otis from the United States who won the race, whether it is Kaufman from Germany who came second, whether it is Malcolm Spence from South Africa who came third, whether it is Manfred Kindred who Milkha Singh beat. So he was in lane 5, which was according to him his favorite lane. And he started real fast. If you ask him, and this is again not me, but Milkha Singh, I'm quoting him from my book. He said, "Bete, main 250 meter tak bahut tej bhaga tha." So he went real hard, and he was leading. So it was Milkha Singh and Manfred Kinder who was leading, at least in the initial part of the race. And then Otis and Kaufman gradually came into the picture. By the end of the race, the American had sealed it. He was ahead, Otis. And Kaufman finished off. But the third place was actually a photo finish between Milkha Singh and Malcolm Spence. It was a photo finish. And before this race, in another race in Paris, Milkha had actually beaten the South African. So Malcolm Spence had been beaten by Milkha Singh in an earlier race. So in that sense, it was an anticlimax for India. But it was a photo finish, and they did not announce the results. They did not announce the results. Milkha Singh again, he says, "Whoa, excruciatingly painful that period, because he knew that he had made that error of running the first part, 250 meters, really strong. And for a sort of split per second, he had slowed down because of that burst, initial burst. Some people say he turned back and looked back, all that. That's rubbish. If you go and see the footage, and you can see the footage of that race, I did when I was working on the book. There never happened that he turned back like this. That is part of folklore. That didn't happen. But what he did was he slightly slowed down at the end of 250 meters. That cost him the medal. And he was distraught. He was distraught. He did not, in fact, he said to me that despite being distraught, he was always a sportsman. After the medal ceremony, he went and congratulated Otis and Kaufman and Malcolm Spence. But he said, while I was congratulating also, I was like, medal chhin ke le le, because ye medal mera bhi hai. So he was part of that, like, I lost that medal. And for days and months, he thought, no more. But to come back from that again and go on and win in Pakistan again was another great high point. And this whole the romance with the fourth position in India for 6 decades is because of Milkha Singh. And then obviously another national heartbreak happened in '84 with Usha. But the first one, and that is exactly what transpired in Rome. The way I've described to you is from all of the contemporary newspaper reports. I've read all. And my multiple interviews with Milkha Singh. That's exactly what transpired in the Rome Olympics.
Oh, it still gives you goosebumps to talk about those moments, right? 61 years since that iconic moment. A lot of requests for questions, but Boria, we'll stick to tributes for today because Boria always takes questions. This is a tribute. This is a special show. We're broadcasting to pay our tributes to Milkha Singh ji. Boria, of course, took you through his memories of his discussions at the Rome Olympics with Milkha Singh. I'll quickly also will take you through this tweet that Farhan Akhtar put out, Boria. He, of course, played Milkha Singh in that movie, in that biopic. Here's what Farhan Akhtar said in a heartfelt post and said that a part of me is still refusing to accept that you're no more. Maybe it's the stubborn side I inherited from you, the side when it sets its mind on something, just never gives up. And the truth is that you will always be alive because you were more than a large-hearted, loving, warm, down-to-earth man. You represented an idea, you represented a dream, you represented how hard work, honesty, and determination can lift a person off his knees and get him to touch the sky. You have touched all our lives. For those who knew you as a father and a friend, it was a blessing. For those who didn't, as a constant source of inspiration and a reminder of humility and success. I love you with all my heart. That's Farhan Akhtar's message to Milkha Singh. Very heartfelt, emotional post, and a lot in line with a lot of what Boria said in his personal interactions with Milkha Singh, the legend, absolute legend. But thank you, Boria, so much for that anecdote, for that remembrance. We'll also leave you with tributes from Harbhajan Singh and Sunil Gavaskar of Indian cricket's icons on what they said about Milkha Singh. Absolute heartfelt tributes. Do listen to what these two legends said. On that note, we wish you a good day and thank you for joining us on Sports Today. Thank you both.
It is really sad news, very, very sad news about Milkha ji passing away. One of India's greatest sporting legends, and he's no more. I know he was in his 90s, and with his fitness, I thought he is going to complete a century. I was really looking forward to that happening, him completing a century. But perhaps because he lost his beloved wife only a few days earlier, he decided to join her in the heavens. It is really a very sad day. I've had some very good moments with him. He's always been very supportive. Every time when I've come to Chandigarh and we've had the opportunity to meet, he's been very encouraging, very, very humble, very polite, hardly ever spoke about his own achievements, but always spoke about your achievements. It is a very, very sad day for Indian sport, and my condolences to Jeev and the family. May Milkha ji's soul rest in eternal peace.
मिल्खा सर के निधन के बारे में जानकर बहुत दिल को दुख लगा, अफसोस हुआ। हम जानते हैं कि उनकी कंट्रीब्यूशन देश के लिए बहुत ज़्यादा थी, और स्पोर्ट्स में तो वो इस स्पोर्ट्स जगत के हीरे थे। और जब जब मुलाकात उनसे हुई है, उन्होंने हमेशा आगे हमें बढ़ने के लिए प्रोत्साहित किया, आशीर्वाद दिया। थैंक यू सर, आपकी दुआएं, आशीर्वाद हमेशा मेरे साथ रहेंगे, और मैं वाहिगुरु से यही प्रार्थना करता हूं कि आप जहां पर भी हो वहां से सबको आशीर्वाद देते रहें। और आपने इस देश के लिए जो किया है स्पोर्ट्स में एज ए सिटीजन, वो बहुत बड़ी मिसाल है, और आने वाले कई पुश्तों तक उस मिसाल को लोग याद करके आपकी तरह बनने की कोशिश करते रहेंगे। थैंक यू सर फॉर योर कंट्रीब्यूशन। और ये बहुत ही दुख भरी खबर है, पर उनके सारे परिवार, मित्र और जिनको भी हम जानते हैं, उनको मैं सिर्फ यही कहना चाहूँगा कि स्टे स्ट्रॉन्ग, वाहिगुरु विल टेक केयर ऑफ एवरीवन।
आज सुबह उठते ही बहुत एक दुखद समाचार हमें मिला कि हमारे बीच में उड़न सिख मिल्खा सिंह जी नहीं रहे। मैं भगवान से प्रार्थना करता हूं कि उनको अपने चरणों में स्थान दे, उनकी आत्मा को शांति मिले और परिवार को दुख सहने की शक्ति मिले। मिल्खा सिंह जी भारतीय खेलों की दुनिया के एक नायाब हीरे थे, जिन्होंने खेलों को आगे बढ़ाने में बहुत बड़ा योगदान दिया। खिलाड़ी क्या होता है उसके मायने बताए। छोटा बच्चा जब भागता है तो बोलते हैं कि मिल्खा सिंह बनना है तेरे को। लगभग 8-10 साल पहले मैं मिल्खा सिंह से मेरी एक प्रोग्राम में मुलाकात हुई थी। जो उनके विचार थे, जो खेलों के को आगे बढ़ाने की उनकी सोच थी कि हिंदुस्तान के खेल आगे कैसे बढ़े, ओलंपिक मेडल कैसे आए। उन्होंने खुद 3 ओलंपिक में पार्टिसिपेट किया था। ओलंपिक में 4th प्लेस उन्होंने हासिल की थी। उन्होंने वो अनुभव भी शेयर किया, और मेरे से भी बोला कि अपना टारगेट बड़ा रखो, तभी उसको हासिल कर पाओगे। आज बड़ा दुख का दिन है हमारे पूरे हिंदुस्तान के लिए, खेल प्रेमियों के लिए, कि कुछ दिन पहले लगभग एक हफ्ता पहले ही उनकी धर्मपत्नी स्वर्गीय दार गई थी, और आज हमारे बीच में वो नहीं रही।
आज सरदार मिल्खा सिंह जी के निधन की खबर मिली। बहुत बड़ा झटका खेल जगत को नहीं, पूरे विश्व को, पूरे देश को मिला है। युवाओं के वो आइडियल थे। बहुत से युवाओं ने उनकी, जब भाग मिल्खा भाग उनकी जिंदगी के ऊपर मूवी बनी जब आई, तो बहुत से युवाओं ने खेल को चुना, बहुत से युवाओं ने फिटनेस को चुना उनकी एक जिंदगी के आधार पर जो मूवी बनी। आज खेल जगत को और पूरे देश को बहुत बड़ा सदमा लगा है। मैं उनके परिवार को शोक प्रकट करता हूं। बहुत दुख लग रहा है आज उनके बारे में ऐसा बोलते हुए, क्योंकि जब भी मैंने बोला है तो उनकी कहानी के ऊपर, उनकी जिंदगी के ऊपर, मोटिवेशनल जो उन्होंने लोगों को किया है उसके ऊपर मैंने बोला है। आज उनके बारे में ऐसा बोलते हुए मुझे भी बहुत दुख लग रहा है। मैं भगवान से प्रार्थना करता हूं कि उनकी आत्मा को शांति मिले और उनके परिवार को मैं शोक प्रकट करता हूं।
दुनिया में भारत का नाम रोशन करने वाले श्री मिल्खा सिंह जी के बारे में सुनकर बड़ा दुख हुआ। आज हिंदुस्तान ने खेल जगत के एक अनूठे सितारे को खो दिया है। कल तक वो हमारे बीच में थे, विश्वास नहीं हो रहा कि आज वो हमारे बीच में नहीं रहे। मैं भगवान से प्रार्थना करूंगी कि भगवान उनकी आत्मा को शांति दे और अपने श्री चरणों में उनको स्थान दे। और सभी खिलाड़ियों से भी आग्रह करूंगी कि आज 2 मिनट का मौन धारण कर उनको श्रद्धांजलि अर्पित करें। धन्यवाद।